Today on the House, I sit down with a friend of mine, Mr. Jeff Schneider of Schneider Studios. Jeff is a welder, artist, and glassblower, and has spent many years working in the construction industry on the management side to help support his passion for creativity. Now, Jeff runs a business installing structural steel and other architectural components, while also finding the time to continue making art. Don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with a friend. Thanks for listening. Elevate your construction projects with trademarks. Durable, waterproof vinyl markers that stand up to the toughest conditions. Perfect for accurately marking locations for electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and other essential elements. These heavy-duty markers won't wear off or move even under heavy traffic. Available in various shapes and colors, they ensure clear, professional communication on the job site. Streamline your layout process and maintain accountability to architectural plans with trademarks. New customers enjoy 15% off at checkout. Visit trademarklayout.com to get yours today. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on. So you're the owner of Schneider Studios, and that's in Bee Cave, Texas, right?
We're in Spicewood.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Spicewood.
Yeah.
Okay, so just on the other side of Bee Cave.
10 miles away from, we're like 5 minutes from the Galleria.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Well, I wanted to go into your background really quick. I know you've been involved in a lot of different positions in the construction industry, from commercial, right, residential, and now you're running your own shop, doing a lot of steel fabrication. You do structural steel, and then you do, interestingly enough, art and glass blowing, which you've probably been doing your whole life, just about, right?
I've been blowing glass since 1997. So,
wow,
27 years.
I definitely want to go into that, because I mean that's such a unique and creative outlet, and you do a lot with that too. I mean, you do light fixtures, art pieces, different kind of installations, which I think is really cool. So, but I wanted to open it to you, and just briefly, if you could give us a rundown of your history. Born and raised in Texas, right?
Born and raised in Texas. Grew up in Midland. Went to school at Texas Tech. Texas Tech taught me how to weld and blow glass.
Really?
After that, I worked as a welder and a glass blower, kind of on and off, or both, for about 10 years. And then my relationship at the time really wanted me to be in a more steady, stable environment, which I completely appreciate and understand. So I went to work as a flooring estimator for a flooring company here in Austin, and moved there from to a construction company where I was the estimator, and eventually was tired of staring at office walls and begged to please let me go see job sites. And we did, back in that was early 2000s, we did a lot of bars, restaurants, and anything that the owner could get us into. He had a residential side too that I really had nothing to do with.
Really?
Then moved on to bigger companies, and eventually moved from commercial to residential. I spent 4 years at Dell handling the vast majority of their remodels. They're always remodeling their buildings.
Really?
And then made the switch to residential, and eventually figured out that I really wanted to be back making things.
Doing your own thing, yeah.
So one day I quit my job, and
rest is history.
Got a domain name and bought some glass equipment with no money and hoped for the best.
But that's kind of how Schneider Studio started, right? It was strictly glass blowing and art, right?
Yes, started actually out of a designer here in town let me rent a room from him, so I had a spot to put a computer and all that in the back of his showroom, and gave me a place to work, and eventually got the nerve up after doing a bunch of business plans that said it wouldn't work to buy some glass equipment, and opened up a glass shop in Spicewood, which everyone thought I was crazy because it was so far away, and it just keeps getting closer.
Yeah, that's true.
Just keeps getting closer in, and focused mainly on classes and ornaments and stuff. I had about 9 galleries in the country that carried my work, and then all of that changed. And when COVID happened, glass blowing is a kind of a hands-on sport. You put your mouth on mouthpieces that other people have put their mouths on. I've never gotten sick from it. But then COVID happened and nobody would come. So all the classes and the galleries that had my work, they all closed. And I had a little welder sitting in the corner for doing shop repairs, and kind of looked around the room and went, well, I guess it's me and you, buddy. We're gonna go to work.
Yeah. So that's what started. So you were using the glass blowing were you using that as a source of income even throughout your like construction career? And
I rented time from a studio in San Antonio and one here, even when I worked at different places.
Yeah.
I would even if it was just Saturday, I'd go blow glass for 6 hours. I'd rent the whole day on Saturday, and we'd have a good time. And or I would used to drive to San Antonio twice a week and rent. We would work from 7 to midnight, and then I'd drive back and be at work the next morning.
That's rough.
It's a long drive home.
That is
You've
a
been
long
sweating
drive.
for 5 hours,
Yeah.
and you got to come home to wife and kids and work.
Yeah.
But I've always stayed in it, even when I was feasibly out of it.
That's commitment right there.
It's
That's
an
passion.
it's an addiction.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that
Why? What is it about it that?
There's literally nothing else on this planet that's like it. I mean, you take lava basically and put it on a stick, and then you blow bubbles. Like it's I'll have ceramicists say, "Oh, it's a lot like throwing," like, well, in that it's a circle. It's like throwing on a wheel, but you can't touch it.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many techniques that are out there. There's so many fantastic glass blowers in this world. I mean, as much as it's a small environment, that if they're always pushing to find new ways to do things, it's captivating, mesmerizing, and it's always joyous. Like
what's the newest thing? I mean, how do you reinvent that? I mean, it's been around for thousands of years. I mean, that's how they used to make glass blowers. Would blow tubes, right, and then cut it and open it up to make sheet glass.
And there are still companies that do that.
Yeah.
There's one in Seattle that I can't think of the name. It's not important, but they specialize in replicating old school sheet glass windows specifically for historical renovations.
Yeah.
So they blow these massive cylinders that are like 4 feet tall, 5 feet tall. Then they stick them in an oven, heat them up just a little bit, slice them down the middle, and then they roll them flat, and you get those imperfections and those waves. As far as new glass goes, glass has come so far sculpturally. And as much as the Venetians in Murano have been great at that for years, I took a class at Pilchuck a couple years ago where the artist Martin Yaneski is his name. If you haven't heard of him, you probably haven't. It doesn't even look like it's possible.
Really?
He sculpts heads and horse heads, and they're realistic. I mean, they look like they should be cast, but it's inside sculpting. So you pop a hole in the bubble and then use all your tools on the inside, and you're pushing the glass around. And it's the hardest thing I've ever done. I made a couple of heads. I took a 3-week class with him at Pilchuck probably 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago.
Wow.
Actually, it was 6 years ago. That was the catalyst to starting a company.
Really?
I found glass studios are very expensive. Equipment's expensive. Upkeep's expensive. You need to have a rental market. You need to have people coming in to keep you in business, or you need to be independently wealthy. And I didn't have any of those things. So I found when I was there, a couple of the guys in my class, they had these portable furnaces, and they would travel around and do little trade show things. Which with my life as it was then, they were in the early 20s. I was 40. I could not do that and survive. I mean, they could because they didn't need as much income because it was just them.
Yeah.
I got a couple kids and mortgages and stuff. I couldn't do it, but I did find the furnaces that they were using intriguing because a normal furnace, 40, 50, 60 grand is a normal, cost. Mm-hmm. And then you're looking at $1,000 a month to keep it running, and that just wasn't feasible. But these furnaces you can get for under 20 grand, and you could call me at 9 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, me and a group of friends want to come out and have some drinks and blow some glass tonight. Can you do that? I could turn it on and have 50 pounds of hot glass ready for you at 7 o'clock. And the other furnaces take a couple days to ramp up. There's more glass in them. It all has to come up, nice and slow so you don't crack things and break things and all that stuff.
Makes sense. Okay.
The smaller furnace, you get away with that. And then it's turned out to be a great asset for my business because I can blow glass when I need to. Mm-hmm. And at this point, we really only blow glass for projects. If you have a chandelier, you have a large wall piece where I'm going to spend, the next 5 to 10 days making parts and pieces, then I'll shut it off and spend the next 5 to 10 days finishing those pieces and assembling whatever it is we're making. But that's, Pilchuck is really where I found the what prompted me starting a business.
Really?
I was like, oh, this could work. I could do this.
That's cool.
I could afford this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what's the craziest thing or the biggest thing that you've done? I've seen some of your installations, like, where you have kind of like flower petals, almost like a cascading on this wall. Or
one of the coolest locally is I believe it's St. David's Round Rock Surgical Hospital.
Okay, yeah.
I have the lobby there has a very large. I think there's like 87 pieces of my glass on the wall, and it's not the hardest. But it's certainly the coolest. Like to walk into a lobby and see all of your work on a wall. I mean, that's
cool.
That's a very cool, like, no one knows it's mine, but every now and then if I'm driving by, I'll stop by and just kind of like, it's still there.
I mean, why wouldn't you? That's so
still
cool.
there. It's still there. So that's really the coolest. And anytime someone, I've had people from the past email me or send me a picture, text me a picture of a piece that they bought. One lady like 20 years ago finds me on the internet, sends me a picture of this, what I thought was a fairly ugly piece because it was 20 years ago. And she tells me how much joy it brings her every morning when she makes her coffee. The light comes through it and it just starts her day off right. And you're like, wow, that's
pretty cool.
That's pretty cool. I mean, to do something that you did and you touched and that you literally breathed some kind of life into when you made it, gives someone that feeling. I mean, I'm getting misty eyed thinking about it. But that's really cool. I mean, I collect art and I buy art that makes me feel that way. So I understand it. The one thing I don't buy is I don't usually buy glass.
That's true. Well, I've been to your studio. I mean, I know when you opened up your studio a few years ago, I stopped by and I was checking out the art. I mean, it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
And I mean, that piece, I don't know if you still have it or not. As soon as I'm sure you've rearranged, but that
we've moved. You have? Yeah, where
are you at now?
So we're just down the street. The shop you came to was a little, I think, 1,200 square foot building. Yeah. That's where I started. We're in 7,000 feet now.
Oh, dang! Wow.
And we're in the process of acquiring, hopefully, some land to build my own shop. So I'm not paying rent anymore.
Dang, that's a big step.
That's down the road.
That's huge.
But working on it.
But that's such a good asset, though, to be able to own your own building and potentially have some, renters.
That would be nice. I wouldn't complain about that.
Yeah. Depending on what they do.
So which piece were you talking about in the space?
Well, it was the one you walked right into the door, and it was the big, I don't know, it was looked like it was, I don't know, 3x4, 3x5, kind of this paint splatter, it was like really heavily textured, almost like it was I don't want to say trowel, but you have the little, I don't know what the tool's called. I'll just call it a trowel. Screw it. But it was very heavily textured, a lot of colors, and it was just, I was like, man, I would love to have that piece. But
the painting.
It was a painting.
I still have it.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, you have to come check it out. See if it still affects you in the same way.
It probably does.
Maybe we can work a deal.
Send me a picture.
Yeah, it's that one. I think I know which one you're talking about. It's one of my favorites.
It's gorgeous.
I used drawing and painting as a release for years when I couldn't blow glass. Whenever I had the creative inspiration, I'd get up at 4 a.m, make some coffee, and I'd draw for 2 or 3 hours before my kid got up. Yeah. And it kind of filled the void that I was missing from life without glass. Even though glass was 1 or 2 days a week, or maybe the studio was shut down for a bit, or I didn't have enough money to pay to blow glass that week, you know. So I used to draw a lot, and we start all of our projects for the most part, if we're designing with either with a designer or a builder. We do a lot of in-house design, and they all start with the sketch for me, and then my operations manager then takes those and turns them into 3D renderings. And so we've just made it a little more technologically savvy.
That's
or better. So we can produce something and really give our clients a true idea of what it's going to look like. Because if you're not in the building world, you take for granted that everyone understands what these plans say. And the reality is most people don't.
I have no idea.
So we try to communicate that in a way that makes sense, as though they're looking into a catalog, or they can, and then we can hold up our rendering when it's over and see it looks just like that. And, it does a couple things. One, it ensures that they're on board, and 2, it ensures that you do what you're supposed to do. And 3, when they say they don't like it, you can show them the photo and be like, well, it looks just like what we showed you. So,
that's great.
But that's our new process.
Awesome. And I actually have, I don't know if you remember, I have some of your your work, your glass bowls and things. Whenever you were moving shops, you were giving. They were in your reject pile.
We were clearing out. Yeah, we cleared out quite a bit. But I snagged
a few, and I still have them. They're sitting on top of.
Awesome. We'll have to get you some more.
I'd love to.
I store a lot of glass. We keep a lot in storage. We're in the process of revamping our gallery, and we have other artists come into our gallery as well, and trying to really make a more cohesive group. Because I tend to work when I work glass. I tend to work in. I guess if you're an artist, you'd call it in series. So I'll get an idea, and I'll try to kind of exhaust that series with this. Like if I'm going to blow glass for 3 or 4 days, just have the furnace on where it's nice and cool, or maybe my guys are off Christmas break. I usually spend all my time at the glass shop.
That makes sense. Okay.
And I'll just exhaust that idea, and then I'll turn the furnace off, and then I'll spend some time thinking about that idea. Yeah. Sometimes those ideas actually get put together. A lot of times they just end up in storage tubs with a label on them, so maybe I'll come back to them later.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I'd love to get some more. So I want to go now into how you got into welding and fabrication, and then eventually into structural steel. I mean, it seemed like you said, that was really driven heavily by COVID, and just out of necessity, you had to have something to, you know, keep the bills paid. So you got into fabrication.
So I'd always done a little bit of welding work. You know, once I started my glass shop, you really, if you have a glass shop, you need to be able to weld because things break, especially under constant high heat. So I had a little Miller-Matic 110 that did its job. I built the benches people sit on, and the first project I had that was metal, I had a designer come in from out of town to blow your own ornament thing, and she ended up buying like 20 of these real simple benches for. I think it was University of New Mexico, like their student union building. And I was like, great, that's awesome. And it's cool that they went there and they're being used. And then COVID happens. We're in the middle of building a chandelier for a parade house out in the reserve. Okay. And I'm out there looking at it with the builder and the designer, and COVID had just started, and we're all, 10 feet away from each other. And I just looked around, and I just said these words. I was like, hey man, who's doing your railing? Yeah. And he said, I guess you are. Can you do railing? And I was like, in my head, I'm going like, well, I mean, I know how to weld. So, I mean, sure. I've dealt with some welders over the years as a builder. And I'm like, well, in my head, I'm going like, well, I can do better than they can. So why not? Yeah. And it really, we ended up doing 5 or 6 houses for him. Nice. Railing led to floating stairs, led to floating shelves, led to everything we do, and our business really grew. It's about the time I acquired my first employee. The initial start of the business, we did a lot of fixes. We fixed a lot of other mistakes. And if you've ever built a set of stairs, there's math involved and there's code involved. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that we were fixing mistakes from were unaware of math and or building code. Yeah, which was great for us. It really worked out for us. We a little trial by fire. We probably fixed 20 sets of stairs that didn't meet code. Wow. Some of them complete tear outs. Some of them I don't want to spend that because I already spent this kind of thing. Like, how can you retrofit make it work? Solution. Over the years of doing that and acquiring those projects, we swapped out a lot of wood rails and chunky stuff from the 90s for a more lean, more contemporary look. Yeah. In the middle of that, we were asked to put in some I-beams. First I-beam I'd ever put in. I'd seen them everywhere, but we were asked to stand up some I-beams. They removed a wall so they could see the lake from the front door. And it was a silly design, beautiful house, but it was built in the 90s and had this great view. And then they blocked the whole view off of the wall when you walk in. And, smart. And that was the first time I was like, well, maybe structural steel's where it's at. Because it wasn't, it was difficult in that we had a whole house sitting on top of us. Yeah. But we did it, and it was profitable. And that was kind of the first thought of structural steel. But I am self-professed not a structural welder. I was always a decorative welder or structural on pipe and industrial stuff like that in a shop. But welding in the field with a stick welder was not my jam. But I did go out and I found a guy who wanted to spearhead that movement for me. Certified, yeah. and I've since been certified, but it's not. I don't weld really anymore. It's the way it works when you run a business. You're running the business. You get to a point where you don't get to do any of the things you started the business for. You just you just run the business. Yeah. So, and And so we grew that way. We were fortunate enough to work with some very good builders who took a chance on us early on, because I guess I'm convincing. And it's been a really good thing for us. And it's nice to be able, as a former builder, it would be nice to be able to hand over, like, these guys are my steel guys and they handle it. Whereas, is that structural? Is that decorative? Who's got this? Who's got that? And that's where you end up with misses in your proposal. And, it's worked to our advantage to be able to do all. And most places, I mean, I say this, there's some other guys in town, they do a great job at both. And we do the same. My heart really goes more toward the decorative because it tends to be more artistic, but I have a great team of guys that love structural. They don't want to make a door. They don't want to do a floating shelf. They don't want to weld brass. Brass has made a comeback, and so we're doing tons of brass right now, which is fun and a different process altogether.
Yeah, brass is a different beast.
But you don't ask those guys who like columns and I-beams and you don't ask them to do that.
Of course.
You're not going to like the results.
Structural steel is kind of an art in itself, and unfortunately, it all gets covered up. I mean, most of the time, you don't get to see it, but a good structural steel job pulled off right. I mean, it's a thing of beauty. But
there's some good ones in this town too. Like there's some of these commercial projects they've done. I look at the steel, and I'm like, man, I'm just blown away.
By the size and proportion of it.
The proportion, the quality of the welds. I mean, that's the other thing as a welder. It's much like a glass blower. You're a glass blower. You pick a piece up and you see like, oh, how'd they do that? If you're a welder, everywhere you go, it's like an affliction. You're always looking at other people's welds, like, I wonder who did that. Or, I wonder who did that. I should hire them. Like it's
the same with builders. I mean, everywhere you go, you're constantly critiquing, right? Like, oh man, that was a mistake.
Like, oh, that corner's wobbly.
That's not.
They going for like a level 1 drywall finish here? Yeah,
I didn't even know that was the thing. Yeah. Well, how do you think? That was kind of my next question. How do you think being on the other side, being in the project management and like a superintendent role, has helped you on the business side?
Well, I mean, overall, all the years I spent in other people's businesses, and as you know, when you're a superintendent or project manager, you're not in control of the money, but you do have some control over how it's spent. You manage it, but you're not in charge of it. Correct, you've got $50,000 to get it painted, and now you're looking for a painter that will do what you want and also fit your budget.
Yes.
So I think, the business management side, because my degree is in sculpture and glass blowing, that's where it has really benefited my ability to run a business successfully thus far. But then the other side of it is on our delivery is that I try to impart to my guys, and we do a pretty good job of it, that we're not the only ones there and that we have an awareness of what's going on. We don't do a lot of remodels. Most of our projects are new build, but oftentimes, if you're doing railing, or if we do glass railing too, we sub the glass out, but you're the last guy there. And so you have to be cognizant of the paint job and the floor finish and all those big, beautiful, expensive windows that your welding sparks will damage and
and then you'll be on the hook for.
Cause your insurance company to really not like you very much. So I think we've done a good job and do a good job with our crews understanding that it's not our house. We're not the only ones there. Someone's got to come in after us. Someone's got to clean it up. I think really those are the two. Really understanding how the builder side works too, and building those relationships. I mean, we're a relationship company. Most of the builders that we work with, we do, if not all of their steel work, we do the vast majority of it because they know that we come through. And my job in the business now is to build those relationships and make sure that they stay good. So understanding that it is a relationship business is really probably that. I mean, when you're a builder and you get a house, you don't necessarily become friends with the owner, but you do in a way. I mean, you're taking care of their baby for them, whether they live here or not. Like this is their dream home or forever home or retirement home. It becomes an emotionally attached thing for them.
Sure.
And as much as it's nice to be just a sub, I would say, Joe, we're just a sub. You're still involved in that process. So it's nice that I've been able to keep a toe in that water, as much as it's not the water that I want to be in as a builder. We have GC'd a couple projects most of the time reluctantly because something fell through or whatever, and they've been successful but we much prefer just to stick with what we know.
Yeah.
And develop those relationships and those friendships. And then you find that those people then refer other people to you, or people see this really awesome thing you built for them and they want one too. And it all helps grow your clientele, your client base, and your business all together.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think too, I mean, being that you have a builder's background, I mean, you understand the frustrations that builders go through day to day, and change orders and unexpected things that happen, and people not showing up, and then having to relay all this information to the owner. And like you said, they get it is a big investment, and they can be emotionally attached, as they always are. And so I think it's good to have that knowledge and understanding as a subcontractor. You've seen the other side of like, hey, my actions are going to affect the builder, and now he's got to take this information and present it to the client in a
yes. And with the building boom we've seen here, and we've had a lot of retirements happen with really experienced superintendents. I mean, just with the guys we work with, we've had I don't know, 5 or 6 that they've hit 65 and went, I'm done. Yeah. And so their replacement is not nearly as knowledgeable. So we really do our best to impart the knowledge of like, we've got a project that's got, it's a bunch of steel, very big steel planter retaining walls around the house. And, imparting to that superintendent in that company that like, hey, I realize that you're kind of dragging on this, but don't forget, after we're in, you still got to do this, and then you got to waterproof, you got to load it, you still got irrigation, you got pipes to run through it, and then you got to plant, and they want to move in when? We need to be here now.
Yeah.
So we try to be proactive on our schedule when we know that especially if we know there's a deadline. They're trying to be in by Christmas, and we still don't have a contract on something that we're running out of time on. So
that's you brought up another point too about having the background of being a builder is you understand really the full scope of the project, whereas I think a lot of people who've been doing steel their whole lives or framing their whole lives or plumbing really have a narrow focus. They have a narrow lens, and they don't necessarily understand like what comes before and what comes after, and the logistics. And so I think having that knowledge is beneficial in that way, because like you said, I mean, then you can educate maybe some newer guys and like point things out to them, be like, hey, look,
right,
this is what I see. Like, you're still going to need this, and this. And
even after we're done, you've still got 2 months worth of work.
Correct. Yeah.
You're trying to move them in a month, and that's probably not going to happen unless you're ready for us to go now, because time marches on, brother. Like, it's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
So that's you're absolutely right. Having an understanding of what the full scope is. It's real easy to kind of pigeonhole yourself in whatever trade and be like, well, I did my job, but what did you affect?
Right.
What problems, even if you didn't cause problems, what schedule did you affect? I mean, you want us here on Tuesday? We're here on Tuesday because you probably have someone scheduled on Wednesday. Or you say, I got to have that staircase finished on Wednesday because my wood guys are coming on Thursday, even if you've lied to me and they're not coming till Monday. At least then...
Yeah, that happens.
I mean, I understand that too. Like, I told them Wednesday, it's not happening until next week, but we'll see if they hit it. And so we really do our best when it's physically possible to adhere to those deadlines and meet that schedule, because we don't want to be the cause of your grief or the cause of your boss yelling at you or your homeowner being mad that they're not in for their Labor Day party or whatever it is that they've got going on. And so certainly having an idea of what the full scope is and what's next helps with that.
Yeah. And it protects you too. Because like you said, if you're doing, let's say these planners that you're talking about, and well, they're going to have to do some kind of waterproofing, they're going to have to run plumbing, I need to account for that. Instead of having to make another trip out there, it's like I can go ahead and plan and coordinate that and leave access for plumbing or leave, room for this. And it's like, because you have that knowledge and understanding. So I think that's a big benefit. But how many jobs you got going right now?
Hard to count. We're finishing up.
Well, structural
jobs. We're finishing one tomorrow. We have 4 more in line after that.
Nice.
2 of them waiting on shops for.
Okay.
The new thing in construction is that the engineer engineers it, and then the steel guy has to have it re-engineered. So that happened somewhere while I wasn't paying attention. But we're waiting on shop drawings on a couple. So I think we have 4 structural jobs. We have a lot out for bid. One of them's pretty fun, hanging off a cliff. It's, those are my favorites.
Yeah.
My guys like those the best too.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I don't personally hang off a cliff anymore, but they like it. They like to take pictures of it. It's fun.
Well, great. As long as they're being safe. Well, so we were kind of talking before the show, but kind of about the labor market right now. And you kind of alluded to it just a while ago saying, a lot of the older guys are retiring and maybe not as many younger guys coming in to replace them. And what's the challenges that you've seen with new hires and skilled labor or lack thereof?
So, skilled labor is, I listen to, and I won't say that I read. I listen to a lot of books on business and business development. And skilled labor, anybody who's in that market of selling you their business ideas will tell you it's the hardest thing to scale because you're dealing with, everybody's got different skills, the skill levels in different trades, and experience matters in those trades. So, we have taken the route for the most part of hiring younger guys that are malleable and teachable and train them up. I mean, they're not worth, their value is not great when you hire them, but you see potential in them and you see a desire to learn and get better. And we offer that path. You may start as our designated hole driller. Like, sorry, bud, you and a mag driller are going to become best friends. I hope you got some good earbuds.
Yeah.
But if they put in the work and they put in the effort and a little bit of energy and they show some interest, then we can train them on the CNC. We can get them certified. We can get them to a point where they're running jobs on their own. That's the path that we found most beneficial because it's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, it's just kind of the reality of, I would like to say that's not true, but in our business, it has been. We've had some great guys come through and move on to trying to start their own companies. And, that's more power to them. I think that's fantastic too. But there's a massive shortage of welders. And from my understanding, there's a massive shortage of all trades because we've spent so many years preaching to everybody that they got to go to college and they got to get this 4-year degree and then what job do they get? And now with the cost, college was a lot cheaper whenever I went. But now with the cost of a 4-year degree, how long does it take you to pay that off? You spend $250,000 on education to come out and get a $40,000 a year job.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely right.
That's kind of insanity, really. Yeah. And in our business, I can't speak to what plumbers and HVAC technicians, and I know they do well. I mean, the last quote I got for some plumbing was very expensive. He must be doing well. Yeah. You can come out of welding school, get certified, and even in our business can make, $100,000 a year. We try, I do my best to retain my employees, and we've done that by paying better than I guess our competition. We offer a very competitive pay and offer benefits and all of those things that you don't normally see in a blue collar company. And as much as we're blue collar, we're working really white collar. I mean, if you want to define the two, we're working on multi-million-dollar houses with very tight tolerances, and there's a lot of thinking. Some jobs have less welding and more thinking. There's a lot more fabricating and fitting than there is welding. And I think I try to encourage anybody who has an interest in welding. We have had a few from Lake Travis High School come through. My first employee actually learned to weld at Lake Travis. He never went to welding school.
Really?
We made him better. I helped make him better initially, and then the welders better than me have made him even better.
Good.
So I think, it's a rough market, and it's a tough market to hire in. You never know what you're going to get. The resume says one thing and the weld test may say another, but the ability to think and adapt, especially on decorative projects, ornamental metals, you may not have everything you need. I mean, we're in Spicewood. We do projects in the Woodlands and Dallas. We're doing quite a bit in Driftwood. We've got work in Fredericksburg, got a boot ranch. You need to have everything on your truck.
Yeah.
You know, it's the planning ahead is key. And some people are more capable of that than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I hope that you know, Mike Rowe has done a great job with trying to initiate people into the trades, but it's a great living. It's rewarding. At the end of the day, you get to see what you did. You know, you get to drive by a house and be like, I built that. You know, it's one thing as a builder. My wife makes fun of me because I'll be like, oh, I built that. And like, I didn't build any of it. I was a superintendent. Like I watched, right?
Right. Yeah. You're right.
We had a whole bunch of guys there. They did a bunch of work and I watched.
Yeah.
So now, you know, in this business, as a welder, fabricator, installer, we actually you get the kind of the pride and joy, much like I talked about with the glass pieces on the wall. Like every one of those you made, and there's some pride in that, and then people appreciate it. Ideally, sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't. But you know, our projects end up in Lux Magazine and Architectural Digest, and we show photos of our work, and that's really
so
cool to see a photo of your work on a builder's Instagram or on a designer's advertising. Even if all you did was this little part over here, you're like, we did that. You know, it's, and I think there's a lot of joy to be found in that. And there's also good money to be made in that as a tradesman. And truthfully, it gives you skills in a lot of places where you could start your own business. You acquire your own truck or your own trailer, and most of my guys do side jobs, or at least they try to get side jobs. They're not estimators. So they don't always win those side jobs, but you know, I encourage them to do that. I don't want them to leave, but you know, if they want to spend their Saturday, Sunday working for extra money and doing their own thing, they should. And they certainly have the ability to.
Hey, things are getting more expensive, man. So you gotta get it somewhere.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, okay. So I want to wrap up with one question, which is, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be?
That's a good question. Buried the lead, man. I should have been thinking about that one. I honestly don't know. I mean, I love the construction industry. I love the end result. You know, when we started, I could only dream of being in the same room as our competition here. And now I feel like we're in that room. And sometimes we lead that room. Sometimes we're following that room. I think the construction industry in Texas, if we're going to talk industry wide, I think if we had, and it doesn't affect me much with the level of homes that we work on, but I have talked to numerous clients who have been burned by contractors, in quotes, who were not really contractors. They just take the money and run. And I think if Texas were to do a certification program where a general contractor had to be licensed and not just the trades, I think that would be the most beneficial industry wide. We fall in the category of, you know, my welders are certified, and on commercial jobs, they usually ask for our certs. Residential jobs don't generally, we don't usually get a request for certs. Or the inspector doesn't ask for them. On commercial jobs, we have to submit them even to start the job. And it's much like plumbing. Like, as long as you have one that's certified, the other guys kind of technically are, they're being overseen. But I think industry wide, if we were to have a general contractor's license, it would really help the consumer. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of unscrupulous businessmen, I guess would be the word. I mean, that's the right way to say it. Con artists, scam artists that will tell you they'll build this for you, but I need, you know, it's $100,000 job. I need $50,000 down, and then they never show up. You give them your $50,000, they send one email, and then they can't be found. And that is unfortunately more common than you would think.
And it gives everybody a bad name, really.
It creates a level of distrust industry wide. It doesn't matter who you work for. If they've been burned by that in the past, they're going to be hesitant in the future. And I think that would be probably the one change that would really affect everyone in a positive way. It may affect the scam artist in a negative way, and I'm okay with that. That doesn't bother me. But you know, when we take a deposit from someone, we deliver. Even if I estimated wrong and it cost me money in the end, we still deliver. And I think when you do that and you stand by your word and you deliver on your promises, it helps alleviate that concern with people. But you still have We saw it more whenever we were doing remodels, and we don't do many remodels and railing replacements, where they gave somebody some money for some stairs or some railing, and they did terrible work. It didn't pass code. It didn't pass inspection. And then we had to come in and rip it out. And I can't do that for free. Yeah, as much as I feel bad for them, we have bills to pay and my guys need money. And,
for sure.
Within the welding industry, I think more promotion of welding through programs that aren't necessarily FFA in the high school.
Okay.
So the only way in Texas, at least where I grew up, that you were going to learn how to weld in high school was that if you were in FFA. Well, you can't see me on this program, but I am not an FFA guy. Like I have a lot of friends and family that are, but that's not my jam. So I would have never even considered welding in high school, and now I've made a career out of it, and a good business out of it. So I think any chance that our education system could promote more artistic welding, rather than like, well, you need to know how to weld your fence if your cow gets out or your horse gets out, kind of thing, would benefit the welding industry, because I think a lot of people are unaware of what their opportunities are in a fabrication and welding trade. You don't have to be a pipe welder. You don't have to work in the oil field. You don't have to work for the state and do highways. Like there's so much opportunity between welding for custom projects. Machining is one thing I wish I knew. Every time I think about getting into that, I realize how costly it is, even after you buy the machine. And there's so much opportunity with government contracts in the world of machining and 3D printing and that kind of stuff. I think that would be a beneficial change to the welding and fabrication industry. That would be nice. I don't really know how you implement that, but
it seems like it's going to have to be implemented privately. Like I don't know if the government, or the school system is necessarily going to go down that route. I mean, it used
Probably
to.
Not.
I mean, you used to have shop class. I mean, I know there are some schools out there that still have some programs like that, but I mean, you used to have home ec, you used to have shop class, carpentry, that taught you basic skills that, you could apply and utilize and create something. And I feel like that's really gone by the wayside. But I don't know, unless you're just heavily involved in the school. I mean, the parents are going to have to make that change.
Yeah, I think that's where we can really implement somewhere in there a process that allows people more like me, who I grew up in an oil field, and actually a cotton field with oil rigs around it. And all the welders that I knew, my friends' dads, they were roughnecks, basically. And I knew that wasn't me. I knew that wasn't the path I wanted to be on. So welding never crossed my mind. It wasn't until I was in art school and I took sculpture and learned how to weld and became a welder. And understood. And even then, I didn't really understand that I could make a career out of making really cool things and for other people's houses or commercial buildings or whatever it is. You don't have to be an iron worker, and you don't have to be a pipe welder. And there are other avenues that are just as lucrative, if sometimes not more so, than trying to be an artist who welds, which is, being an artist is a difficult path. But there are people you can work for that, I've never had a guy come in and say, oh, we learned how to make railing in high school. No, they don't exist. Or we learned how, the math of stairs works in school. I mean,
that'd be beneficial.
That would be beneficial. Your risers can't be 10 inches tall. I mean, that's, so I think, I probably over answered the question.
No, not at all.
I think that would be great for our industry, not just Texas and not just local, but nationwide to show what the opportunity is.
I agree wholeheartedly. Have your kids shown any interest in welding or any kind of artistic interests?
So I think my son would like to weld, but he's only 6.
Get him going, man.
So he's not, I think the first time he gets burned, I mean, the thing with welding or glass blowing is you have to just kind of desensitize being burned. It's just part of it. And my daughter, who will be 14 next week, I started.
14?
Yeah, I know.
Wow, dude.
It's crazy. Yeah, she was like probably 6 or 7 last time you saw her.
Yeah.
She started learning how to blow glass. She had a project in 8th grade on something, and she wanted to learn how to blow glass. So she's experienced it a couple times, and she's actually got some talent with it. And,
That's cool.
And the 2-year-old, I don't really know what she's into yet. I mean, she likes food.
Yeah, that's right.
She likes food. She's big into lunch. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. She wants lunch.
Well, that doesn't go away. I'm picking up lunch too.
Yeah, I like lunch too. Lunch is good.
All right. Well, that's awesome. Jeff, it's been a pleasure having you on, and I appreciate your time and your willingness to come on and talk with me. So
yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
First podcast I've ever been on. So,
well, you did great. Thank you.
Super excited.
Thank you for coming on, buddy.
Thanks, man.